Trump's final strike, a direct hit on the weak spot of India and China. Will Russian oil supply stop? Just imagine. What would happen if the world's largest oil supplier suddenly shut down? Petrol prices would skyrocket, industries would come to a halt, and the entire global economy would tremble. Now imagine that this shock comes directly from the US President himself, Donald Trump. And his target is not just Russia, but the two nations whose economies depend heavily on energy, India and China. The Trump administration has imposed strict sanctions on Russia's two biggest oil giants, Rosneft and Lukoil. These are the very companies from which India and China buy millions of barrels of crude oil every day. This isn't just an economic move, it's a strategic strike that has thrown both Asian powerhouses into deep confusion. The US has set November 21st as the final deadline. After that, any country or company caught doing business with these Russian firms will also face American sanctions. In other words, the game has shifted. This is no longer about tariffs. It's about survival. Since the Ukraine war, Russia has become the most sanctioned country in the world. But Trump's latest move is far more dangerous than the previous ones. It doesn't just target Russia. It attacks the energy lifelines of both India and China at once. China imports around 2 million barrels of Russian oil every day, while India imports about 1.6 million barrels. That means 1 out of every 3 barrels leaving Russia goes either to India or China. So when America says, enough, stop buying, the impact won't just hit Moscow, but also New Delhi and Beijing. Now the question is, why did Trump choose sanctions instead of tariffs? The difference is huge. Tariffs make a country's goods more expensive, trade becomes difficult, but not impossible. Sanctions, on the other hand, make trade impossible. Tariffs are an economic signal, but sanctions are a financial weapon. With tariffs, you can still trade, but under sanctions, the entire banking system, insurance, and international transactions are blocked. That's why, this time, the risk for both India and China has increased many times over. India's position has now become extremely complicated. Today, about 34% of India's energy needs are met through imports from Russia. The country's major refineries, both public and private, depend heavily on cheap Russian oil. The biggest names here are Reliance Industries, which has stated it will comply with US regulations, and Naira Energy, in which Rosneft itself holds a 50% stake. In other words, within India exists a player that is half Indian and half Russian. The real question now is, whose side will Naira Energy take? Washington's or Moscow's? The Indian government faces a classic caught between two powers dilemma. On one side stands Russia, India's longtime and trusted energy partner. On the other stands the United States, India's modern strategic and defense ally. If India continues buying oil from Russia, it risks US sanctions. But if it stops, inflation will rise, industries will face higher costs, and fuel prices will burden the common people. It's not just an economic risk, but also a political one. According to the US Treasury Department, only contracts valid until November 21st will be honored. After that, any new deals or supplies will be considered illegal. This means India must now find alternative supply sources from countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, or Africa. But the problem is that Europe, Japan, and China are already competing for the SAM markets. That means higher demand, rising prices, and every country being forced to spend more. The oil market has already reacted to this news. Brent crude prices have crossed $66 per barrel, rising over 5% in just 2 days. Because when the world senses that supply will shrink, prices automatically climb. And here, we're talking about a loss of 3 to 4 million barrels per day, roughly 4% of the global supply. Indian state-run companies like Indian Oil Corporation, IOC, and Bharat Petroleum are now exploring alternative strategies. An IOC official said, "We're looking at alternate supply options. But if every country rushes to these SAM sources, premiums will rise and our profits will fall." In short, if Russian oil stops flowing, oil will still come from elsewhere, but it will be much more expensive. For India, this isn't just an economic test, it's a diplomatic one. Will India bow under US pressure and distance itself from Russia? Or will it preserve its strategic autonomy? Because India is no longer just an energy consumer, it has become a player in global energy geopolitics. If India bends now, it will send a message to the world that even the largest democracy couldn't withstand external pressure. This year, Russia became India's biggest oil supplier, surpassing Saudi Arabia and Iraq. Russian oil was cheaper, and the ruble payment system made trade even smoother. India smartly bypassed Western sanctions to secure its energy needs. But now, the US has built a wall across that very path. Because under these new sanctions, not just oil trade, but banking and insurance channels will also be blocked. If a tanker carries Russian oil, its insurance could be cancelled, and it might be denied entry at ports. This move could cripple the entire supply chain. Trump's strategy isn't only about pressuring Russia. It's also about weakening both India and China. He knows that both nations' economies depend heavily on energy imports. If their energy supply chains are disrupted, their growth will stall. That's the weak nerve Trump has targeted. China's position is becoming increasingly unstable as well. According to a Reuters report, Chinese state oil companies, PetroChina, Sinopec, Nuke, and 𝐮𝐸𝐻𝐸 Oil have halted purchases of Russian seaborne oil. They fear that getting caught in US sanctions would shut down their international funding channels. China used to import around 1.4 million barrels per day of Russian seaborne oil, but that figure is now steadily falling. In short, Trump's move has shaken Beijing's stability too. For India, the problem runs even deeper because oil here is not just fuel, it's the backbone of political stability. When petrol prices rise, everything gets affected. Inflation, transportation, food costs, and ultimately, public anger. For now, the government has kept fuel prices stable by having state-owned refineries absorb the extra cost. But if Russian supply stops, this delicate balance won't last long. A major question is now echoing through New Delhi. Will the United States offer India any relief if it distances itself from Russia? Or will India be forced to buy expensive oil while enduring American pressure? Both scenarios are tough. In the first, India risks losing its strategic autonomy. In the second, its economy comes under immense strain. Some analysts believe Trump's real goal is to achieve global energy control, because the nation that controls the world's oil flow also controls global politics. Trump understands that direct military pressure on Russia won't work. But if Russia's two biggest buyers, India and China, are cornered, Moscow's income will automatically collapse. India's refineries are now exploring new payment systems and alternative sources. But oil trade isn't just about buying and selling, it's a complex web of tankers, insurance, banking, and political permissions. Even a small disruption can bring the entire system to a standstill. India is signaling that it will do whatever it takes to maintain steady supply, but that's easier said than done. The coming weeks will decide how India and China navigate this American trap. Will India align with the West or maintain an independent energy policy? Will China openly support Russia this time or retreat under economic pressure? These aren't just questions about oil, they're about the global balance of power in the 21st century. Today, Russia is bound by sanctions, China is mired in uncertainty, and India stands at a crossroads of dilemma. And the man orchestrating this entire geopolitical game is none other than Donald Trump, the leader who never fails to shock the world. He has proven that modern wars are no longer fought with guns, they're fought through oil pipelines. Whoever controls the flow of oil controls which economies rise and which ones collapse.
If our video has taught you something new, do not forget to like and share this video so that this information can reach others as well. Your likes and shares are a source of inspiration for us. If you have any questions or suggestions, please let us know in the comments. It will be our honor to answer your questions and listen to suggestions. And yes, if you like our content, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you stay connected with every new story. Thank you. GRT Business YouTube channel sources: news from various news agencies, opinion polls, and other public sources. We try to ensure that every report and summary is accurate and verified, but we are not responsible for any dispute or error. Our aim is only to provide you with accurate information.